welcome to this, the Thursday, as we like to call it around here, the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. Very glad that you're able to join us today. Behind the glass, as she always is Vanessa Van Den Ez, who does outstanding work here as we roll you through the latter half of the week. And it looks like the forecast is maybe going to take a quick turn to the cold side of things. Another reasonably warm morning. I think it was -6 when I woke up this morning. Seeing temperatures around -4 today, and that is, of course, much warmer than we've seen for the last several weeks. But the forecast now indicating that we're going to see a bit of a drop-off in temperature tonight as we see the mercury plummet into those low double digits, some suggesting it could go as low as -12, -13, -15. So it will be a cold night tonight, but it's not going to stick around for much longer. We're going to see temperatures rebound on Friday, and at least at this point, listening to the forecast this morning, it appears that we may not see a whole lot of snow this weekend for the first time in, 4 weeks, 3 weeks? That we haven't had a weekend storm into Monday, so that is going to be easier on your back. So you're not having to shovel again this weekend. There was a little bit of a dusting of snow this morning. It was more out there than I had anticipated, just enough to make you brush off the car this morning if you did that. Isn't it just drive you bananas when you're commuting somewhere? If you're out and about, you jump in the car, you do what you're supposed to do. You take the snow off the roof and off the windows, and you scrape everything down, and you get going, and the guy or the person in front of you has not. Saw several instances of that on my commute in this morning as I was paying a little bit closer attention to the commute after we talked yesterday about the provincial government musing about putting carpool lanes into bus lanes here in Nova Scotia. I didn't see a whole lot of dual people inside the cars this morning. Well over 90% of the vehicles that I saw were single occupant only. So the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, will be here to answer that question and a bunch more after 11 o'clock today. In about an hour's time, he's going to join us here in the studio to answer some of mine and a bunch of your questions. After 11 o'clock, the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, will be here. I'm looking forward to it, and I know that you are as well. Well, we touched on concerns surrounding the One Person, One Record program currently operating now at the IWK with Dr. John and house calls earlier this week. The Nova Scotia Nurses Union raising some concerns about how this new system that's designed to replace paper record keeping is working, maybe causing a little bit or some delays in admissions and so on and so forth. We're very pleased to welcome back to the program today the president of the Nova Scotia Nurses Union. That's Janet Hazelton. Janet, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. This program is currently only running at the IWK, as I understand it, correct?
That is correct. It's due to roll out to the remainder of the province, the health authority, central region in May.
And it's designed to kind of replace the old school paper stuff that we used to do.
Yes, and so people will have electronic charts. Therefore, if you were going from the hospital in Sydney to a hospital in Halifax, there's no paper chart going with you. It's all electronic, so that the physician and nurses and others that see your chart, when you get to Halifax, they can just log in and see your blood work and all of those. So in theory, it's something that is needed,
right,
and it's something that is going to make the care better.
There's always a difference between theory and in practicality, though, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, nurses are extremely frustrated at the IWK. They've been, since it's gone live, because like most IT programs, there's things that they hadn't thought about, whoever they are, that create these programs. So there's lots of little glitches that are happening daily, which is causing a lot of frustration for all of the people that have to deal with this charting system. It's taking nurses and others a lot longer to complete tasks and to do the task, but to write the task or chart the task. It's taking them a lot longer than it did with the paper charts. They're finding They believe that they didn't quite get enough education before they went live.
Right.
They feel that they ought to have gotten more so that they won't have all these kinks. It's typical when you introduce a new IT program that there are going to be kinks. And, oops, we hadn't thought about that. And so we're going to have to deal with that. And the employer is doing their best. You know, they're listening to the concerns and they're trying to fix them. But that doesn't help with the frustration that nurses are feeling when something that used to take 20 minutes is now taking 2 hours.
Wow. And
they believe that it's taking from the care, the one-to-one care that they have been giving and that they're so proud of giving.
It's that was my next question, Janet. This is obviously going to impact a nurse's time, right? They're busy to begin with, and now having these extra delays up to 2 hours, that's going to impact admissions. It's going to impact the amount of care that they can provide.
Exactly, and so, you know, a nurse told me that, you know, an admission that used to take 40 minutes is taking several hours. So that is leading to their frustration. But more importantly, you know, it's typical of the nurses. They are very concerned about it rolling out to the rest of the province, as they call it, the adult world, because they believe that the health authority is like 10 times bigger.
Right.
So, you know, and the diversity of care in the adult world is different than in the pediatric world. So they're expressing concern, you know, about that rollout, even though they don't work in the adult world. They are very concerned about their colleagues and how they're going to get through this transformation.
I understand that the company Oracle Health is behind the design of this. Are they open to some of these concerns, and are they working through them with the nurses?
Yes, they are, and so is the employer. So they call them tickets. So when a nurse or others run into a problem, they fill out a ticket, and then it gets addressed with the team, the Oracle and the senior leadership team at the IWK. But as you can imagine, that's one building.
Right.
So when it rolls out to all of those other buildings within the health authority, they and I'm concerned about the support that is going to be required to have success in the rest of the rollout. Considering
that it's going to roll out right from bow to stern of the province, right?
Yes. At the end of the day, all acute care, so IWK and the Nova Scotia Health Authority will have this charting system.
When's it supposed to roll out, Janet? Do you know?
May the 9th, I believe it is rolling out in Central Region. So that's your Halifax area.
You said that Nova Scotia Health has been receptive to this. Have you had any discussions with perhaps delaying this and getting the bugs worked out at the IWK first?
Well, that really wouldn't be, you know, I've talked to the health authority about the concerns that the IWK nurses have. I suspect that the senior leadership at the IWK are having those conversations with the senior leadership at the health authority, I assume, but we haven't heard as of yet that it's going to be delayed.
ERs are busy places, right? We hear the stories daily here on the program, and I know you live it as a nurse and as the president of the Nurses Union. Any kind of delay at the ER is just going to exacerbate that problem. Yeah,
and as you know, the longer people wait, the more frustrated they get. We have lots of issues with violence in our workplace, and, you know, longer wait times is just going to exacerbate everything. So I'm not sure how they're going to mitigate that.
Janet, switching gears a little bit, how goes the battle to recruit nurses? Are we gaining nurses here in the province?
We absolutely are. I must say that the monies that the government has given us to help to recruit and, more importantly, retain nurses, you know, we're introducing lots of really good things to help keep nurses working. We were able to negotiate patient ratios in our last collective agreement, and once we're just starting that, but once that gets in, where nurses will have a set number of patients, it's going to make a nursing life easier. It's going to make their not easy, but easier. It's going to make their job more predictable, and more importantly, it's going to give better patient care. And so I believe nurses are hopeful that once this gets instituted, their work life will be better.
We chat. I think the last time we chatted, Janet, we were talking about nurses that were new to the profession that were leaving. Is this and those things you just listed for us? Is that stopping that? Is it stemming it?
Yeah, the latest figures that I have seen is that the majority of nurses that are graduated from Nova Scotia are staying, working in Nova Scotia and working full time, which is great. And we're open always to do whatever we can to support nurses in their practice.
Janet, I know you're busy, and appreciate you spending a few minutes with us today.
No problem. Thanks for the interest.
That is Janet Hazelton, the president of the Nova Scotia Nurses Union. Anybody listening here who's gone through an IT rollout, including this radio station, will tell you when new programs come in, they are full of hiccups, bugs, and as Janet Hazelton said, some things that maybe weren't thought about. The problem with this one is that, and Janet had addressed it in our interview, is that we know that the ERs are already backed up, right? We already know that there's an exorbitant amount of wait times. And when this rolls out province-wide into the ERs across the Nova Scotia, a 20-minute process that Janet described now taking 2 hours, you can imagine what that will do to back things up even more at the ER. Hopefully, Oracle Medical, who's responsible for this program, and Nova Scotia Health and the Nova Scotia Nurses Union and Doctors Nova Scotia can all work together on this and get the bugs rolled out of it. It sounds like once it's fixed, it's going to be more efficient, right? We don't have to wait for paper records anymore. But it seems to be the MO when it comes to new technology and new programs that are designed to make your life easier. Usually it takes a year or two to get them running the way that they should be. Going to take a break here on the program. When we come back, credit rating of Nova Scotia. We talked about this earlier in the week, and we've heard that the province's credit rating has been downgraded by one of the major credit firms. Will that impact our ability to borrow? Is that going to drive costs up? The interim leader of the Liberal Party of Nova Scotia is Iain Rankin. He'll be our guest when we come back. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day. You can't go very far where people aren't able, or there are commercials on the television and on the radio talking about credit ratings and credit scores, and we're not the only ones that have them. The province of Nova Scotia has a credit rating as well. The province borrowing much more money than you and I are going to borrow in our lifetime, or many of our lifetimes combined. And it appears that at least one of the credit rating organizations, S&P Global, has some concerns about the way we are spending money here in Nova Scotia, and has downgraded our credit rating as a province from A1 to A1 from A1 plus, which is from, I think, its second highest rating to its third highest rating, which can have an impact on our ability to well, not the ability, but the amount of money it's going to cost us to borrow money moving forward. This, of course, has raised the eyebrow of the leader of Nova Scotia's Liberal Party, and that is Iain Rankin, and he joins me on the phone this morning. Iain, how are you?
I'm great. How you doing this morning, Dan?
Good. Is this really a big deal? I mean, obviously, it's a credit score that none of us are going to get.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't want to overstate the problem, but I think it's fair to say that there will be impacts, especially long-term impacts to our services and potential future tax increases. So it's not a crisis, but it's something that we've been watching for a long time, myself and and other colleagues in the past had talked through budget sessions and warned about this happening from some of the major credit rating agencies, and here we are today, back to where Nova Scotia was around a decade ago. And we've seen when we came into government in 2013, there was some significant work to claw back to a balance, and not without pain. And the rating was actually improved during that time, and now we're dropping back. So that could have big impacts. Nova Scotians should be paying attention.
The S&P group that is responsible, S&P Global, my mistake, that is responsible for this credit rating, citing that they suspect that, and I think most of us do, suspect that we'll see at least two deficit budgets upcoming, and of course we're all staring down that $1.4 billion in debt.
Correct, yeah. And let's not forget that every single budget this government tabled was in a deficit position. And towards the end of the year, by chance, there was revenue coming in from largely population growth that has slowed down. And the government had choices to make, and they spent all that capacity as it came in outside of regular processes. And so we don't have eyes on that as legislators. We don't have to have that opportunity to scrutinize all of that spending. I'm sure some of it's good. Some of it should have went through some scrutiny. And this time, I agree with the credit agency, it's going to be a lot more difficult for that to come back and find revenue from different sources. So it's expenses that are growing over time, and our debt servicing costs that they're pointing out is increasing. So that gives us a negative outlook. So that not only impacts services, but it is actually a signal to the private sector. And we've been talking about the need to grow the economy a lot, and this will send that signal to investors. And when they hear words like weaker fiscal outlook for the province, then that means something to companies that have capital that's easy to move around.
Iain, it's one of those things that doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's debt servicing cost, right? We talk about spending, we talk about government spending all the time. The government gets criticized for it. But at the end of the day, one of the biggest line items on the budget is the amount of money that we have to pay the bills with.
Correct. So that debt servicing has grown by almost 50% in the last few years. And I think we have to really link it to what's happening today on the ground. And so we have these big commitments around childcare that are more vulnerable. We are supposed to have $10 a day childcare by next month. That was the commitment the province made to secure substantial federal funds. Most provinces have that. So where's that capacity now that we're spending so much on the debt servicing? Where's the capacity to spend on healthcare and more schools and dealing with these traffic issues throughout HRM? So that's really the connection that folks should be focused on. It's not just about debt, but it's about the limiting the capacity so that we can actually meet our obligations that people can count on as a government.
Iain, I have to ask you about one of the big announcements that came out of the province this week, and that was the change to the first-time homebuyers program, lowering that down payment threshold from 5% to 2%, but then the government kind of picking up the surety or the guarantee on that so we can avoid those insurance costs. Your thoughts on this program? Is it going in the right direction?
Well, those people need help. I think there's a lot of people that are looking for their new home, and they do have the income required, and sometimes they're just missing that 20%. The need to get that down payment without borrowing from parents, and not everybody is able to do that. And so I commend the government for recognizing the problem and coming up with something that I think will help a lot of people. So happy to see some movement that'll help for Nova Scotians that are looking for their first time home.
No concern that with the government backing these mortgages that we're going to put ourselves into a bit of a sticky situation from between now and the next 25 years if these mortgages default or we see a drop in property value?
It's always about mitigating that risk, and that's what goes into designing these kind of programs. And we're going to have, I think, the credit union is who they're using that. We'll look at qualifying folks that are looking to participate in the program, and I think largely I'm supportive of the program. I think that there is a need for help, and it actually does connect to the conversation we just had on debt. So don't forget that folks that are young, that are in their 30s, that or in 20s even, they're going to have to inherit fiscal challenges that this government has left behind. So they need some support, and this is something that I think the province can step in and help.
Premier was in Massachusetts yesterday and announced a memorandum of understanding with the governor there with sharing power from Wind West. When that, or if that ever gets built, your thoughts on that?
It's good to see some movement on markets. There also needs to be movement on who's going to pay for the transmission. I think most investors, most large companies are looking at certainty on moving the electrons to get to places. But it is also still looking at the United States. We have challenges, obviously, with that partnership, and we need to also do what the Carney government is doing in diversifying our markets and looking at how we're going to actually export our product. But that offshore project is a potential long-term solution. It's not going to solve all our fiscal challenges. MOU really doesn't have a lot of teeth in it. And of course, the United States are developing their own offshore. The courts have overruled some of President Trump's decrees to try to stop those projects. So all of that, I think, is important to be watching very closely as an opposition party. Largely, we are definitely supportive, as we always have been, for developing renewable energy and helping the economy move along with it.
We know that you are all getting ready to get back into session down at the legislature. Iain, what's at the top of your agenda for this session?
It's a budget session, so it is looking at how they plan to tackle the finances. To date, there hasn't been a plan to address the challenges they have before them. We want to see $10 a day childcare in place by next month. We want to see strategies to grow the economy across the board and not just big, large projects. We have small businesses across the province in important sectors that need to thrive in agriculture and forestry and startup economy, how we scale up our businesses. And that's really what's going to drive the ability for Nova Scotia to claw our way back from the bottom of the pack in our country. We need some investment. We need a government that can find ways to attract investment into our province, and we're going to continue to talk about the need for building infrastructure to unlock that investment. So that's rudimentary things we need, like a good road network. Cell service is something we hear a lot about, not only in rural Nova Scotia, in Halifax too. We all drive and get our calls dropped, and that impacts business. So that does tie back to our original conversation, and I'm glad you had me on the show, because I do think the debt and our limiting capacity limits our ability to really find ways to unlock investment and be a province that business wants to invest in and that thrives.
Iain, appreciate your time, sir.
Always a pleasure. Have a good one, Dan.
That is the interim Liberal leader for the province of Nova Scotia, Iain Rankin. We're going to stop. We're going to get an update on the news. The show continues on the other side of it. When we return, Tim Houston not ranking well when it comes to fiscal management in a new poll from the Fraser Institute. Jake Fuss, the director of fiscal studies with the Fraser Institute, will be our guest. Back after the update. Welcome back, and just a quick reminder that the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, will be in studio here in about 30 minutes' time. He's going to join us for a full hour to answer some of my questions and hopefully a whole bunch of your questions. So make sure that you're by your radio, make sure you have your phone handy, and I look forward to these conversations. It's a lot of fun when the Premier joins us. New data from the Fraser Institute showing that a lot of love for Alberta Premier Danielle Smith for her fiscal performance as of late in that province, resounding number one spots. Number two was Doug Ford. But moving down the list, and you have to go quite a way down the list to find Tim Houston, he sits currently at the 7th position, and Wab Kinew, who on the last Premier's popularity survey that I saw was number one most popular Premier in Canada, is at the very bottom of that list with fiscal responsibility. To put a little context on this and what it means, we're very pleased to welcome back to the show from the Fraser Institute, Director of Fiscal Studies, and that's Jake Fuss. Jake, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.
So it's interesting how popularity and fiscal management kind of are on opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to these polls.
Well, one of the important things I think when we're looking at this data is ultimately, this is just one metric looking at fiscal performance for the premiers, but this is ultimately a really critical driver of economic well-being for the people of the province. Ultimately, the premier is setting the direction of a government. So we're looking at things like, how are they performing on government spending? How are they performing on taxes, deficits, and debt? And ultimately then adding up those to give us some relative scores to compare the premiers over time.
Is one category weighted more over the other? I'm thinking like debts and deficits and those kind of things.
No, so we equally weight all three categories over time, so we're not necessarily placing more emphasis on one category than another. So some premiers can actually perform quite well in one category, but maybe they perform less well in the other two, for instance. Or, even in the case of Alberta's Danielle Smith, who placed first overall in the rankings, she performed quite well on taxes and deficits and debt, but she didn't actually perform all that well on government spending, for instance. So there's kind of this equal weighting between all the categories, and all of them matter in the overall scores.
Tim Houston coming in below the 50%, well, that 50% mark, and in the seventh position. That I would imagine would be based a lot on the deficit budgets and that $1.4 billion in debt we have.
So one of the interesting things with Tim Houston is he actually performs relatively well on deficits and debt, because throughout most of his year he's actually averaged small surpluses overall. So even though more recently it has been back into those deficit positions, he has actually reduced debt as a share of GDP moderately. So he is in the top three among premiers when it comes to deficit and debt management. Where his score really struggles is on the other two categories. So if we look at government spending, for instance, he's 8th out of 10 premiers as he's increased spending faster than inflation and population is growing in the province. And then also on taxes as well, he's placing 9th out of 10 premiers on that score, primarily due to how high Nova Scotia's taxes are both on businesses and on personal income. So that's really where the score falters, is on those latter two categories rather than the deficits and debt category.
Can this indicate any kind of trend in moving on? Are we going to, because of those scores, or can we figure out how this is going to go in the next couple of years?
Well, I mean, all premiers have room for improvement on these scores, and given the importance of sound fiscal policy, one of the things that, premiers like Tim Houston or other premiers across the country can do to improve the scores and improve their fiscal management overall. They can prioritize restraint in spending. They can move towards balanced budgets on a regular basis. They can also reduce their debt levels and establish a more competitive provincial tax system. So those are really the key factors that are going to shoot you up the scores and also set up your province for success. It's not just about scoring well in a study. It's also about actually managing your province's finances very soundly.
Ontario's premier scoring very high on this chart as well, and despite some of the criticism that he's received over the last year.
Yeah, I would say, when it comes to Premier Ford in Ontario, I would say his score is largely more a result of other premiers not doing as well, more so than him doing exceptionally well in the rankings. So although he does place second overall, this is largely due to him getting the top scores for government spending, not necessarily because he was super restrained with his government spending. It's more so because he was more restrained than other premiers were, who were spending at much more fast rates. But he scores 5th on taxes. He's actually near the bottom among premiers when it comes to deficits and debt, in 7th place. So overall, even though he scores fairly high, I'd say this has a lot more to do with the poor performance of other premiers across the board in Canada.
Jake, my pleasure. I appreciate your time.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Jake Fuss is from the Fraser Institute here in Canada. Tim Houston, number 7 in the country out of 10 when it comes to fiscal performance over the last year. Still waiting on an update from Halifax Fire with regards to the situation this morning at the Halifax at the Armory, another old building, Dan. What we do know is that it was an alarm this morning that grew into a second alarm. We know that the fire was somewhere on the first and the second floors. Was apparently a stubborn fire inside one of the walls at the building. Some reports indicate that they had to ventilate, which means they had to cut a hole in the roof of the form. It's now under control, and now the investigation begins as to causes. It's unfortunate. That is a iconic building in Halifax. There's no doubt that the Armory is certainly an icon that sits there at the Halifax Common. Is undergoing a series of renovations, and this is certainly going to be a setback for that. And we hope that because they had to cut a hole in the roof of it, that it doesn't contribute to any long-term additional damage to this. As I understand that the sprinkler system engaged, so likely going to be some kind of water damage there. But anyway, we've reached out to Halifax Fire, and we're going to do our very best to update you on the situation at the Halifax Armory as we get the information. We're going to take another break here. We've talked to our next guest several times about the situation that teachers are faced daily, it seems, in their classrooms. And new data is showing that violent incidents inside our schools are happening way too much. In fact, some teachers are taking the extraordinary measures of wearing things like Kevlar sleeves to protect themselves from getting bit or getting stabbed. A conversation with the president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, Peter Day, when we return. All right, welcome back. I read this article on the CBC website, and it's eye-opening to say the least. The unions representing Nova Scotia's teachers and support staff say school violence remains a top concern for its members as the Education Department reports tens of thousands of violent incidents in recent years. Now, the article goes on to read that data provided to the CBC by the Department of Education shows there were 27,108 recorded incidents of physical violence in the 2024-2025 school year. I'm assuming that's the most recent data that they have. The year before, 21,398 and 27,486 incidents in 2022-23. In the article is quoted the president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, that's Peter Day, says he has seen the province take some positive steps. We talked to Peter about this in the show a couple of times. But he goes on to say, and here's the quote, that we have teachers who are wearing Kevlar sleeves to protect themselves from students who bite or stab. We have students who are throwing objects, heavy objects, around the classroom, which causes our classes to be evacuated. This is a profound effect on not just the teachers, but the students themselves. I'm very pleased to welcome to the show the aforementioned president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, and that is Peter Day. Peter, welcome back.
Good morning. Happy to be here to chat.
We've talked about violence in classrooms in the past, but that quote that you gave the CBC there really kind of puts everything into perspective. This is a daily occurrence many times a day.
Unfortunately, it is, and that is the reality. And this is occurring in many of our public schools right across Nova Scotia. Often we hear about the high-profile, newsworthy incidents where we hear about a high school student bringing a weapon to school, and thankfully that doesn't happen frequently. But those are the ones that we do hear about. What's interesting is as you go down in grades, the lower grades, the number of violent incidents actually increases, and that's occurring every day in our classrooms.
Peter, many that are listening to the radio now are saying, "Well, what has happened? What has changed? Why? When I went to school, there was never an incident like this."
Well, I don't. This is not something that's new. I know that my predecessors, who've been president of the NSTU, have been talking about this. The AG's report from 2 years ago on violence in schools talked about successive governments not addressing violence in schools. So it's not a new issue. And this is something that teachers have been, voicing their concerns for quite some time. The problem is, I do believe that it's not getting better, and that we do have behaviors in our class that are causing those numbers to increase. As you just spoke to the data, it's very unfortunate that this is happening, but we need to take a serious look at it to address it.
We know these numbers come as we rolled out the new provincial student code of conduct. Is that having any impact at all?
Well, and you mentioned that from the article. The government is taking some steps forward, which would be the school code of conduct, and that, we did get some positive feedback from our teachers that was having a positive effect. But the unfortunate part is, with that school code of conduct, throughout that document, they talk about supports for students. We still haven't seen what those supports are. We haven't seen any supports being put in place, because ultimately that's where the issue is. Disciplinary actions alone aren't going to solve this problem when you're dealing with young children who, they're often unable to understand the significance of their actions. These students need supports and resources put in place. And when I talk about those resources, I'm talking about smaller class sizes, so that teachers are able to have the opportunity to build those relationships with students and to meet students at their level and gain that sense of trust. But we also need our specialist teachers, our behavioral specialists, our school counselors, school psychologists. Many of our students with behavioral needs or mental health concerns, they don't have the opportunity to meet with those specialized teachers and get the resources that they need to help them, grow and develop and be a positive part of the school community.
Is that where a large majority of these violent incidents are coming from, those students you just described?
Well, we have students who can become dysregulated, and that have violent outbursts, and we have anything from verbal harassment to physical assault. These are things that are occurring in our classrooms, and It's not just one or two kids. It's a serious issue, and I'm a little concerned that in that same article that you referenced, that there's a bit of a downplay that because it happens in elementary, it's not that big of a deal. But I can tell you that the very real emotional toll that it has, not just on our teachers, but our students and our school communities, it is very serious.
And that was my next question, Peter. You're obviously representing members right on the front line of this. What are they telling you? Do they have a solution for this, or are they getting fed up and leaving the profession?
Well, I do think, first of all, we need a strategy. And that's, again, I referenced the AG's report about successive governments, and we still don't have a strategy put in place to address violence in schools. But as I already mentioned, smaller class sizes would go a long way to help combat this. But again, access to the resources, our professionals, our teacher specialists, behavior specialists, school counselors, school psychologists. Some of these students are waiting years for testing. They wait weeks and months to actually have the opportunity to work with these specialists, and that's going to have a negative effect. So all of that together, we know that teachers are leaving the profession. We know that specifically teachers within the first 5 years who enter the profession are leaving, and we know that about a third of them are leaving. The best way to deal with that is if we have a strategy that is going to retain the teachers that we have, and by retaining the teachers that we have and making the working conditions more positive experience, because we know that a teacher's working conditions are a student's learning conditions, but by making the job more desirable and a safe environment to work in, that will have a positive effect on recruiting new teachers as well.
Peter, I can't imagine a teacher's life these days bashing through that curriculum, trying to teach kids, and that's why they get into the profession, because they want to teach kids, they want to help them. But having to deal with all this other stuff and threats of and even real violence in the classroom, I wouldn't want to go to work anymore.
Well, our teachers, we love our students,
right?
And they're the big reason why many of us stay in the profession, because of those connections that we make, and we get to see the students grow and learn, and seeing that aha moment in our students. But there is a very real emotional toll that our teachers suffer from. Going home at the end of the day, feeling that you failed to meet the needs of students, or with the issues of violence, fearing to go back to work the next day for fear of something happening, to constantly be on edge, and not just our teachers, but again our students as well. There's a very real emotional toll that is taking place, and if we don't come up with a strategy, if we don't address these needs, if we don't put these resources in place, I fear it will only get worse.
Peter, the Premier is going to join the program here right after the news at 11. If you were sitting in this chair, what question would you ask him?
Oh, I think I would have all kinds of questions for the Premier, but just that, not so much a question, but just I hope that the Premier is as equally concerned about our public school system as many of our teachers are, because we know that we do have a world-class public education system, but we need to ensure that teachers have the resources, that students have access to the resources, and I hope that he's on board with supporting that and coming up with a strategy to ensure that our students and our teachers and everyone in our school community has a safe environment to work and learn in.
Peter, appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
That is the president of the Nova Scotia Teachers Union, Peter Day. All right, folks, as I mentioned, the Premier will be here right after the news at the top of the hour. It's obviously going to be a very popular segment, and the phone lines will get busy, so we're going to open those up right now. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Some special rules with regards to our conversations with the Premier because it will be so busy, and we're going to try to get to as many questions as we can over the next 60 minutes. I ask that you keep your questions short. We don't need the long preambles. We don't need the story working its way around to get to the point. Please try to keep your questions as short as possible. We'll give you the opportunity to ask the Premier the question. I'll ask the Premier as well when he comes in to try and keep his answers short so that we can get through as many people as we want. It's not often you get an opportunity to go face-to-face or at least earphone to earphone with the Premier of Nova Scotia. So we'll try to get to as many people as we possibly can. The telephone lines, folks, are now open. Vanessa is busily lining people up. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, will be your guest after the update. All right, welcome back. It seems like it was just yesterday that our next guest was in the studio with us and was in here for an hour and told me that he had a good time and was looking forward to do it. And lo and behold, after we got through the Christmas break and into the new year, here he is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to welcome back to the studio Premier of Nova Scotia, and that is Tim Houston. Mr. Premier, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it. It's like the nervous anticipation of the first snowstorm coming, like everybody's kind of excited, but kind of no. I enjoy doing it. I appreciate having me. I
had Mayor Fillmore on last week, and I billed him as a special guest host. So maybe next time, Premier, you can sit on this side and you ask me questions.
Okay.
How does that work?
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't be a very exciting hour.
I'll be game.
Fair enough. Again, 902 folks, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I want to get to as many calls as we can today. As I mentioned before the news, as you well know, this is a very popular segment, so we'll try to do our very best. Of course, I have a couple of questions to kick things off, and Premier, I'm going to begin with the mortgage program, the first home buyers program that was announced earlier this week. A pretty significant shift in down payment percentages for first-time home buyers, and some other things that are included in this. I guess, what was the genesis behind this? Why did your government decide to change the first home buyers program?
Yeah, just obviously home ownership is our whole society is kind of based on the dream of home ownership in so many ways. So, and we know there's this real segment of the population that can afford high rents in some situations, but can't afford the down payment, so they're kind of stuck in this on this little cycle of not being able to buy a home. So we're trying to look at that segment and catch them and say, like, here's an opportunity for you. You have a certain income level, and we'll work with the credit unions to make sure that you have a lower down payment threshold, just 2%, which is kind of half of what normally would be required, I guess. So give them a chance to own a home. And I've actually heard quite a bit of positive feedback on this. It's providing some hope to a real group of people who we're kind of losing it a little bit.
One of the other caveats with regards to this program is that the new homeowners, wouldn't have to pick up the CMHC insurance, the insurance on a high ratio mortgage premium. The province is going to back that. Any concern that down the line, because these mortgages go 25 years, that the province is going to end up having to cover some of these mortgages?
Well, the credit union is good. They kind of know their customers too and work with them. So we're just trying to. There's a bit of risk for sure, but we think it's a risk that's worth taking to give people that opportunity to get into their home. And we know that those that own home, it's a big thing for them, and it attaches them to the province too. We want people to stay here, and build their lives here, have their families here, and do all those things. So,
any reason why we went exclusively with the credit unions and not the rest of the banks? Would they not get on board?
Actually, it's a pilot. So right. It might extend, but actually I was at an event and just talked to some credit union people, and I said, well, do you guys have any ideas? And this is maybe, I don't know, about a year ago, and somebody floated this out there. And I said, let's look at that. So it kind of went from a discussion into a research, and here we are with a pilot. So we'll look at it, and I assume that others will come on if the pilot proves to be working.
We know that the session's getting ready to kick off, and budget's part of that. Do we know, are there any costs associated with this home ownership program?
Well, I mean, some of it is, some of the risk could be down the road if there's defaults and stuff like that for sure. But right now, I think it's just using the might of the province to support people in the time of need, and that's kind of what the whole budget is about. I mean, we know we have a significant deficit this year. We're going to table another budget. It'll be a deficit. Budget? It'll be a deficit.
How much?
It's a big one. It's a big one. It'll be over $1 billion, in the billion range somewhere. Like it's a big number. But it's kind of, we have with the premiers last week and the prime minister, and this is what we're seeing across the country. We're not alone in this. Like this is like everywhere is kind of feeling this, and this is the time when you have to invest. So we're investing in healthcare, we're investing in education, we're investing in people, and I think those are investments that are the province should be making. So we'll do them, but it can't go forever like this. That's why we want to get the revenues going with the natural resources.
And is it going to be close to deficit, close to the last one? We're talking about 1.2 billion-ish?
Yeah, I think the current year that we're in right now is 1.3, 1.4 somewhere. So it'll be the budget that we table will be a little bit less than that.
Okay,
but it's order of magnitude. But this is the time when we're investing in people. We're gonna continue to do that. But it's also why I'm pushing so hard on building the economy, creating natural resource, opportunities for people, and we have tons of opportunity there.
We saw and had a conversation in the last hour with the leader of the Liberal Party, who's concerned about a drop in the credit rating by one of the rating companies in the world. Premier, any concern that these large deficits and these continual large deficits adding to the debt, is that going to increase our cost to borrow money?
Yeah, I mean, it's where we are. It's not a great feeling. We didn't set out and say, look, here's our, this is what we should do. It's what we have to do. But we have to invest in people. And so we inherited a situation where people know the state of the healthcare system. It was not in very good shape. It required massive investments just to get where we're at. There's still work to be done. So we'll continue to invest in healthcare. We'll continue to invest in people. I mean, government, we have to be fiscally responsible, but we have to be compassionate too. Right, so we're trying to find that balance, and we'll get through this because we have so much opportunity. Obviously, the Wind West project, but natural resource development, natural gas, mines. There's so much opportunity. These are all opportunities that our province has that we've looked away from. We just haven't done it. So, when we came to government, it was after kind of a decade of saying no to everything. No to investments, no to natural resource development, no to this, no to that. So we're trying to get things back on a more sustainable path for the long run, but we have two options right now. Really, we have two options. We can raise taxes. We remember that. It was called the NDP, right? Or we could cut healthcare, cut education. We remember that. It was called the Liberals. So we're trying to be smart. We're trying to thread a needle. It'll be lean. It's going to be lean for sure. But really, the answer is to grow the economy and get things going. And that's what gets me fired up.
Is it a difficult budget to put together, Premier, when we have such a large portion of the tax dollars that come in every year from Nova Scotians that go to servicing the debt?
It's a portion for sure. So I think, if you think about our full budget would be, 16, 17 billion, somewhere in there spending range, then the debt servicing cost could be about $1 billion, right? So it's a meaningful number. But that's coming from building schools, building hospitals, paving roads, building bridges, coming from all those things. And right now, the deficit that we have this year right now, most of the deficit that we have in this current year is because of tax breaks, right? The biggest tax break that we had, and certainly in decades, right? On income taxes, also on HST, GST, right? So, and school lunch program. We've served over 1 million lunches to kids at school. Some of those kids, I don't know where they would have. They kind of look forward to that, right? So the deficit that we have is from. I didn't even talk about healthcare, right? The deficit that we have is from investing in people, and that's a fundamental core responsibility of government.
Last question I have, Premier, before we go to the phones is when we talk about these huge numbers, these billions of dollars in deficit budgets and the debt that's growing every quarter, the biggest question that I get from people with regards to that is, my taxes going up. Are you committing that we're not going to see a tax increase this year?
Yeah, there's no new taxes in the budget.
Easy answer. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get to the phones. We welcome Tim to the show. Tim, how are you?
Morning, Dan. Morning, Premier. Thanks for the opportunity. Listen, you briefly touched on what I'm about to say. It's the ongoing accumulating debt. As we know, one has to define between needs and wants. And at some point, the debt, if it hasn't already surpassed, is going to quickly surpass and accumulate. And, I'm 64. It's not so much my concern, but for kids now that will be growing up, they will inherit the debt. And my point is, when do we stop spending and when do we try to control the debt? Thank you.
Appreciate the call, Tim. Premier?
Yeah, thanks. Every day, this is, the things we're trying to make decisions on every day. And we try to focus on investments, right? So we're investing in people. We're investing in infrastructure. And I think that, if you don't make these investments, what's the future look like? It's like the company that says, well, maybe our sales team is costing us too much money. Let's get rid of all of our salespeople. And then they're like, oh, geez, why don't we have any money coming in? So we're trying to balance these things every single day, Tim. And this budget, certainly the last couple budgets, I guess maybe my first 4 years as Premier, a lot of catch-up spending. Trying to, in healthcare, hire more doctors, hire more nurses, just invest in things they'd been neglected, like honestly. So we try to catch up on that. Now we're trying to level things off, and it will be more lean for sure. But I think, the opportunities that we have to grow are so significant in energy, wind, tidal. The Bay of Fundy is a huge opportunity. There's been research there. Natural gas, onshore, offshore, oil, offshore, all of these things, but we haven't done any of them. Not to mention, all the opportunities we have in forestry, fishing, farming, the traditional industry. So we have to play the hand we're dealt. Right now, it's a tough time. Families are struggling. Governments our budgets are tough, but we have to be there where we can be there. And that's not just a nice to have. That's a need to have.
Going to take our first break. The Premier's going to stick around here till the top of the hour. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. If you get a busy signal, patience, keep trying. We'll try to get to as many of you as we can after the break. Welcome back. In the studio with me, the Premier of Nova Scotia. That's Tim Houston. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That's the telephone number. Let's get back to the phones as quickly as we can here, and we welcome John to the show. John, how are you?
Hey, not too bad, Dan. Yourself?
I'm well. Your question for the Premier, please.
Good morning, Premier Houston. I just want to say that I was happy to see your announcement regarding the assault-style firearms program and how you were encouraging Nova Scotia to not participate. I'm happy to see that you're standing up for property rights for Canadians. And just with the recent kind of conflicting statements from the Halifax police chief, just wondering if you could provide some clarification there.
Appreciate it, John. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. This is a incredibly important issue, and I guess a frustrating issue in some ways. But obviously, we're all concerned about crime, the crime in our communities that's happening. Some of the things around bail reform, crime is a real issue, and it's people are worried about it. I'm worried about it. So any kind of effort to combat crime is a good thing. But this gun buyback program is not going to do that. Like, the criminals are not going to line up and hand over their guns. It's just not going to happen. So it's a misguided program. It's well-intentioned, but it's misguided. And look at the incredible failure that happened down in CBRM. They went ahead and did it. I think it was $150,000 that was invested, and they got back 26 guns. Like, it's just so. When I heard the police chief of Halifax say, so that would be a Halifax City thing. They've decided to do that. The police chief has decided to do that. I was it's ridiculous, to be honest. So there's lots of things that officers can be doing to help keep communities safe. This program is not one of them. So what we've said is no provincial money will go towards any of these programs. So if somebody thinks that we're going to give them provincial money to participate, it's not going to happen. And Halifax should know that as well.
Appreciate it, John. That hope answers your question. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's say hello to Brian. Brian, how are you?
Good, thank you. Very quick question. I'm wondering why Nova Scotia Power, a private company, is in the electrical code for Nova Scotia.
Sorry, Brian, why they're in the what?
The electrical code for Nova Scotia Electrical Code.
Oh, so if you look at
Power has the final say.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So this is like if you're building a house, Nova Scotia Power gets the one to sign off, and I guess the other side of that would be to expand that to other qualified people. Brian, is that?
Yes. Well, Dan knows. I have a house totally on solar, and they had the final say on my occupancy permit. They're a private company. I don't understand why.
Okay, and okay. I'll check into that for sure. If we can I would be in favor of more competition in everything concerning Nova Scotia Power, and maybe in this.
Brian's concern is that he's 2 miles away from the closest electrical pole, so he is likely never ever going to see Nova Scotia Power electricity. He's completely off the grid. Yet he had to have Nova Scotia Power come to his property to sign off on his electrical system, even though he's never going to use Nova Scotia Power's power.
Maybe it sounds like that might be something that can be addressed, Brian. Maybe we'll get the number and reach out and see what maybe it might be some insurance ramification. I don't know, but it sounds like, as I said, anything that we can do to increase competition. Certainly, where Nova Scotia Power is concerned, we're interested in that.
Premier, we saw meetings, we saw testimony before the Nova Scotia Energy Board last week and the week before with regards to the power rate increases. The government wasn't there. You made a statement at the end of it. Why, A, not appear, and B, is a statement enough?
Yeah, so I guess a couple things. So I guess the decision was made to listen to all the witnesses, listen to all the testimony. I wouldn't have said anything different if I would have testified then, so we listened to it all. And then at the end, we put our final closing submission in, which is that the rate increase should be rejected. They haven't proven the case in our minds. And we actually asked the board, since Nova Scotia Power is so tone deaf that they're seeking an increase at this time. To me, that opens the door to look at a lot of things. So in our final submission, which was, I think it was about a 20-page submission that we put together, I signed off on. But there's a bunch of things we want them to look at in there to try to rein in Nova Scotia Power a little bit. I would say Nova Scotia Power plays by their own rules. It's time they play by the rules that kind of benefit society.
What kind of power do you have? Do you have the ability to affect change at Nova Scotia Power, being that it's a private company?
Yeah, so you can always. So the board is independent,
right?
The board of the experts, right? So it's best for the market and society if the board makes their decisions and you kind of honor those decisions. So we've stated our case very strongly. I encourage people to look at the case we put forward there. I'm hopeful that they agree with it. I mean, yes, in theory, we could use the legislature and the hammer, but when you start to do that, it spooks the market a lot, right? Now, remember, this is at a time when I am trying to encourage billions of dollars of energy investment to come to our province, in wind, in the gas, oil, all these, solar, all these areas, right? So at a time when you're trying to attract billions of dollars of investment capital, you got to be careful on how aggressive you get when you go around and do an end around the regulators. So these are all things that are on my mind.
Premier, we were asked by Nova Scotia Power when it got really cold there a week or so ago that to kind of conserve because they were concerned about the grid and electrical generation. Does that raise any concerns with you, considering that you're talking about creating all kinds of new generation capacity offshore and a grid that's wonky to say the least?
No, big investments are required in the grid for sure. This is actually part of the discussion that we had with Massachusetts yesterday when I was down there for the MOU. So there will be investments in the transmission. That's required for sure to move things around. And look, Nova Scotia Power, in this case, they were not alone. There was this was a pretty remarkable cold stretch we had. The demands were significant. Lots of provinces were asking people to kind of just be mindful of their consumption. That's okay. That's, usually we're used to them reacting after the fact, right? So, but there was lots of provinces where they were at risk of rolling brownouts in Canada in 2026, right? So that
was only minus 20. I mean, we get minus 20, right?
Yeah. Well, we some of us do.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break for the news here. We're going to get an update on what's going on, and the Premier's going to stick around until 12 o'clock. So keep trying. If you get in a busy signal, we'll get to as many calls as we can after the update. Welcome back. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the telephone number if you want to ask a question of the Premier. He's here for the next 30 minutes. And let us get right to the phones to see if we can get to as many people as possible today. We welcome David to the show. David, how are you?
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Premier. My question is about the marijuana industry and opening it up to small-scale producers or retailers. Just briefly, I have a friend. He's highly educated, but his passion is marijuana. And he would do amazing things, but he can't. And sort of the only people that can are either illegal operators or sort of large-scale monopolies that sort of charge high prices and produce inferior products. So, just from a perspective of innovation, growth, creating economic opportunities, maybe it's time to open this up a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, David. That's a good timely question. Love the asking for a friend too. Listen, we want cannabis to be treated like booze, really. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, right? So there's so many illegal dispensaries around. They are illegal. The courts have decided that. So we want the law enforcement to step up that enforcement. And there's a number of reasons for that, but one is the health and safety, so you know what you're getting and the ingredients and all these types of things in there. So right now, the product that's sold through the Nova Scotia Liquor Corp is regulated by Health Canada. So I would say that that's the route to go. I would suggest that your friend try to understand that process with Health Canada and try to understand how to get into that regulated market, because that's where it needs to be. That's public safety is just too important.
We know that you took some criticism, Premier, when you came out with regards to illegal dispensaries, suggesting that some of the marijuana that's being sold there was laced with fentanyl. Most of us have done as much digging as we can do, have not been able to corroborate that. You still sticking to that, or do you want to balk that back?
Yeah, that's that. I would. Here's the thing. So you're buying a product that's unregulated,
right?
So there's nobody testing the growing conditions, mold, mildew, pesticides. These are all risks, right? There's lots of research on that. And then you're buying it through. Most of this product is coming through organized crime. So think of the cross-contamination opportunities. Somebody's cutting some product, I guess, on a table, and then they're done with that, and they put the marijuana. There's all kinds of cross-contamination. And I'm out listening to people's experiences, and, I'm hearing from them that, if they had a negative experience, well, where did you get the product? Well, I got it from this, illegal place. What's in it? Don't really know. And so they could do some tests on it and stuff. So what the point is, it's risky business. It's risky business to buy something that's unregulated when you don't know where it's coming from.
We had discussions with the chiefs on this issue. They were upset when this rolled out that they weren't consulted.
Yeah, they're upset, but it's an illegal product, and it's their health risks. There's all kinds of dangers to it. It's organized crime. behind it, in not in all situations, but certainly in a number. It's big business. So anyone who thinks this is not organized crime, but I don't involved in some way, shape, or form, I don't know what to tell you. So I would say, like, just we have to focus on the health aspects of people. We're spending a lot on our healthcare system, right? So this is all part of that. So it's an illegal product. We've offered alternative routes to the First Nations, but it's illegal. The courts have decided it's illegal, and it needs to stop. And I'm hoping that law enforcement steps up their enforcement.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Thanks for the call, David. Let's welcome Albert to the show. Albert, how are you?
Yeah, good morning. Yes, I have a number of concerns. I just don't expect you to answer all of them, but they're all based on this approach for rapid population growth and rapid development. It's leading to intrusion into our city bylaws where the province has overruled the waterfront setbacks and wildlife corridors. It's all done in the name of being predicated upon rapid population growth. So the province wants increased densification of the city. I also have concerns in the rural about the glyphosate spraying and the discontinuing of the maintenance of our dike lands. So you can just answer any one of those, I suppose, whatever you have time for.
Appreciate it, Albert. Premier, let's start with water setbacks.
Yeah, thanks, Albert. No, look, we want, population growth. The population's been growing. It's kind of leveled off a little bit, and the immigration numbers from the feds have definitely kind of leveled off and are probably scaled back a little bit. So, but we want people to have a roof over their head, an affordable house. That's what we really want for people. So, we're looking at some of the situations where you have a potential subdivision might have been, in the planning stage for 10 years, 15 years, far too long. So we're trying to get government to the place where government can get to the yes or get to the no. It's not always yes, but it can't always be no either. We've had a lot of no's over the years. So it's either and get away from the maybe. And maybe in government speak is let's do another study. Let's do this. So we're just trying to bring some efficiency to it and have some common sense on some of these rules that some of them just gotten away from us over time. Just get stacked on and stacked on and stacked on. So, but we're the government, myself, I'm a Nova Scotian. I live here. I care about this province. I care about the air, the water, the earth. I care about all those things, a sustainable society. But we're just trying to make decisions that work for people, for today and for the long term.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number if you want to join the program. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We say hello now to David. David, how are you?
Not too bad. Good morning, Tim.
Hi, David.
How are you this morning?
Pretty good. We'll see what you hit me with, though.
Well, I have a lead up to my question, and it's on your Win West program. I watched a lady from England. Her name is Kathleen Porter. She's an expert on electrical energy. And their windmill program over there and in Spain is a total disaster. Rates have gone through the roof because of it. My understanding is that down in the States, there's windmills offshore that are leaking PCB oils into the ocean. Blades are falling off them. So I don't understand. This is not sustainable. And I want to know why you are putting windmills on our offshore, on our fishing grounds, on the shoals where the fish are. And nothing is being said about the fishery. That is a renewable resource worth $3 billion. Could you give me an answer on that one?
Sure.
Why you're disrupting a fishery and putting in a non-renewable resource?
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Let's let the Premier answer.
Thanks, David. There's a lot to break down in there, and some of it is, some of it's just not true. Let's say that. But the concerns are legitimate. Let's make sure that we do things safely and sustainably. So this is a long process, environmental studies. So, it'll go through a pretty significant process. We have a major opportunity. We have incredible wind speeds, the best wind speeds in the world. We have a situation where the wind blows a lot. They call that the capacity factor. It blows 55, 60% times. It's windy. It's strong. It blows a lot. The bottom depths are good for fixed. So there's all the conditions. I guess the people in this industry, and there's a lot of money and investment and technology in the industry. As they look at the global opportunities, they're identifying this Nova Scotia opportunity. If it's not the top opportunity in the world, it's one of the top for sure. So here we have an opportunity. So what are we going to do? Let's just say no. We watched a couple documentaries. We better not do that. That's not. We can't do that. We have $1 billion deficit. We have major energy needs. So let's do the research and understand what is possible. That's what's happening. It's specifically on your fisheries comment. I think you said that nobody cares about it or nobody's paying attention to it. That's absolutely not true. Of course, we care about our fisheries. It's a major contributor to our GDP, always will be. And just so you know, David, I don't know if this will alleviate some of your concerns or not, but there are a number of what we would call wind development area opportunities around our province. Initially, we identified 8. There's probably more in the fullness of time, but we initially identified 8 and started to have various discussions. And then after consultation with fishers, looking at shipping ranges, routes, talking to some of the Navy people and stuff, the 8 went to 5. And so 5 of them went to the next stage of review. Now, ultimately, we approved 4, and most of them were smaller than the initial ones. So there's all kinds of concern and consideration being given to all these issues, but it's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity that we owe it to ourselves to explore. And that's what we're doing, and we will explore it aggressively.
Premier, you said that this could be a solution to the deficit budgets that we're seeing and a boost to the economy, but then also said that this isn't an overnight fix. This is we're several years, some would even suggest maybe decades from full capacity and all of those gigawatts that you've been talking to us about. Is there a concern that this project is so far off that it's really not going to, at least this generation, impact what we're seeing when it comes to deficit budgets?
No, it's part of the path. Like, we have to be we're on a path as a province somewhere, right? So this is part of the journey to get there, and I think it'll be a one that we'll look back on in time and say that was a good idea to get into that. There'll be some highs and lows along that journey because it is a journey, but it's just part of it. But think about energy in general. Everybody is concerned about what we pay for our power today and where we get it from and how it's generated and all that stuff. But we have tons of opportunity in, let's say, onshore gas. And onshore gas, Nova Scotia Power, in their inputs that they put into their system to create the electricity we use, they use a significant portion of natural gas. It could be as high as 20%. But the natural gas that we get here all comes through the United States. We're the end of the line. We pay like maybe $15 a unit, $12 to $15 a unit for natural gas. In Alberta, that's $3 or $4. So imagine if we could develop our own natural gas here and get the price that we pay down from 12 or 15 to 6 or 7 or something. Then all of a sudden, power rates start to come down. This is a more short-term thing, but I was with the governor of Massachusetts yesterday, and she talked about energy, and she said it's all of the above. It's all of the above here too. Offshore wind, onshore wind, gas, all these things. We have to be looking at all of them. But David, look, we try to be all those things we hear as well, and we're concerned about them, and we try to understand them. The technology changes, the way they produce them changes, the way they maintenance. All this evolves over time. And we're just trying to make sure that we have our eyes wide open. And so you raise some things that we're concerned about, but we can't just say it's too hard, we're not doing it. I'm not on that page.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're going to take a break. The Premier is here till the top of the hour. If you're trying to get through, a couple lines are open, folks, if you want to try and get in. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Back in a bit. All right, welcome back. Premier Houston in the house, here to answer your questions. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let's get back to the phones, Premier, to see if we can get a couple more people in here before we run out of time. And let's welcome Jesse to the program. Jesse, how are you?
Hey, guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear. Your question, please.
Perfect. So I guess my question is, related to the previous incident, the Nova Scotia Power breach that took place. I'm not looking to reopen that wound, but in terms of, I guess, Premier, in terms of your comfort level with us as a province and our ability to kind of avoid finding ourselves in a similar situation. How confident are you, I guess, in the controls and all the things that are in place to, like I said,
No, thanks, Jesse. And I know where you're going, because it is what I would say is I'm as confident as I can be. We have a great team at cybersecurity. We make significant investments. It's a concern everywhere in society. Major companies have breaches. Governments have breaches. Government of Nova Scotia got caught up in another breach. I think it was maybe 3 years ago that somebody else got breached, and some of our stuff got caught in that. That was in the news at the time. But Jesse, I would say to you that we're very conscious of that, and we're very mindful of our responsibility to keep data safe and protected, and we take every step we can.
I'll ask the question, Jesse. Are you happy with the way that Nova Scotia Power handled their breach?
No, because I think their initial response was pretty slow. I think they tried to come around in the end, but I think this is one of these things you just got to be upfront straight away. And I think there's still a lot of questions about how they're handling that process.
Thanks, Jesse. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-881-8255. Keith, how are you?
Good morning, Todd. Morning, Premier Houston.
Hi, Keith.
Just two quick questions. Number one, why do we pay the second highest rent in Canada here in Nova Scotia? And number two, the rent cap will be expiring. When is it? The end of 2027?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Before that expires, is there any kind of a plan to maybe continue on with the rent cap? And if not, when it expires, what will the government step in case there all hell breaks loose when the rents start going up after the rent cap goes off?
All right, Keith, appreciate it.
Thanks, Keith. It's an important question. Obviously, it's one we're all concerned about affordability in general. But so our approach to the rent situation has been more supply, more housing. We think the answer to the housing crisis is more housing. So we're seeing lots of units come online for sure across the spectrum. We've invested in student housing. We've invested in rent supplements. We've invested in public housing the first time in decades for sure, and all kinds of market housing stocks. We came up with a housing plan. We're quite far ahead on the plan and the number of units that we would have thought we'd have at this time. So we'll continue to work at that. And in some parts of the market, we are seeing rents start to come down a bit. And some of the offers, a couple months free, some of this type of stuff are, we're seeing some of those come back onto the market as well. The rent cap will be in place till the end of December 2027. We'll continue to assess, but I'm still hopeful that the market will balance, because the rent cap is not without unintended consequences too. The person's rent is capped, but then when they move out and somebody else moves in and people, there's all kinds of moving parts of this. So it's definitely not a perfect solution. But we want to do what we can to support people. We've made pretty significant investments in rent supplements to help people, and we'll continue to focus on getting more housing supply on the market. But it's a real issue, Keith, and we're conscious of that, and we're trying to do what we can.
Premier, you mentioned student housing. Some of the universities are concerned that some of their funding is tied to capacity. Some 95%, I think, is the number, and several universities in Nova Scotia have trouble filling their residents. I guess your thoughts on that?
They better figure that out. I was pretty shocked to hear that in the housing crisis we're in, and all the stories you're reading about students in particular as a segment of the market not being able to go to school because they couldn't find a place to live, all these types of things. And then to turn around and find out they had massive just empty rooms sitting in their own student housing in their own dorms. So we're saying that doesn't fly with us. You got to use those. You're part of a community. You have housing. Get them in use. So I think most of them have come along. Some of them still have some pretty high vacancies, but they're trying to do better. But can you imagine being in a community where there's massive housing needs and having a whole bunch of empty dorm rooms just sitting there.
Doesn't make a lot of sense,
yeah,
right?
It's ridiculous.
All right, last word today goes to, where are we here? Iain, welcome to the show.
Thank you. My elevator pitch here is for the Premier. Nova Scotia has fewer stat holidays than any other provinces. This directly affects our well-being, family time, and tourism opportunities. Is there any plans in the future to have Nova Scotia catch up to the rest of the country for stat holidays?
Thanks, Iain.
No, it's not. It's not what we're looking at right now. It's not because we're unkind or anything like that, Iain. It's just not in the things that we're trying to work through. This is not on my top 10 or maybe list, I guess. In fairness, but we do know that we as a country, Canada, when you look at efficiency and productivity, as a country, Canada ranks pretty low in the G7 in efficiency and productivity, and Atlantic Canada is some of the lowest in Canada. So we're always looking for ways to be more efficient and more productive, and that kind of helps employees too. But I certainly appreciate time away from work and the ability to recharge and the importance of that too. But we're not looking at another stat holiday right now, Iain.
Thanks, Iain, and thanks to everybody that joined the program, and my apologies to those of you that we were unable to get to. Hour goes by quickly. Last question, Premier, before we let you go. You were down in Massachusetts yesterday. You've said a couple times had a conversation with the governor down there, signed a memorandum of understanding to share some power. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the initial pitch on Wind West was that we were going to serve Canada's power needs. Do we really want to start shipping power to the U.S.?
They have big demands. We're going to have in the fullness of time, but when we are really clicking along on the Wind West, because we use 2 gigawatts. Right. That's what we use right now. We'll use more. It could be more consumption's coming, but we can produce 40, 50, 60. That's when you're producing 40, 50, 60, you only need 2. You have a lot of excess that you can sell and move. So, yeah, other parts of Canada for sure, but New England is a big market too. So we're looking at all options, and if we want people to build that generation, they need to know that they can sell it somewhere. So that's all part of attracting the investment capital.
No concerns about reliance on the United States given the situation.
Energy security. I mean, that's everyone's concerned about that. And, for all the issues with the United States, the relationship between Atlantic Canada and New England is pretty strong. Obviously, we have the Christmas tree with the Boston and all that stuff. So those are long-standing friendships. But look, we're looking for opportunities and customers and people that can be reliable. So we'll continue. It's an evolving situation, but pretty impressed by the Massachusetts situation right now.
Premier Houston, thank you very much for spending an hour with us. I know you're an extremely busy person, and I know that our listeners benefit from it, and we're glad you're here.
Appreciate having me. Thank you.
That is the Premier of Nova Scotia, Tim Houston, who we're going to get the elevator pitch on the way downstairs to see if we can get him back soon to join the show, because as you well know, it's a very popular segment. And as I said during the preamble to the show, it's not often you get an opportunity to ask your questions of the Premier of Nova Scotia. And we're very grateful for him for being here and doing that for us. We're going to stop. We're going to take a break. You heard the whole hour. Now's your chance to react to it. We're going to open up the telephone lines for the open hour. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Did you like what you heard from the Premier? Did it kind of tick you off? Here's an opportunity to sound off on it. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back in minutes. Hour number 3 here on the Thursday, or as we like to call it, the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Very glad you're able to spend some time with us. You heard the hour-long sit-down with Premier Tim Houston. Lots of subject matter covered, and the Premier may have answered your questions. may have not answered your questions. You may be happy with his responses. You may not be happy with his responses. This is your opportunity to sound off on that. The lines are open, folks, 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Lines are open for your thoughts. Lots of emails obviously coming in during that conversation. I know the phone lines are kind of busy when we're trying to do that, and some of the emails, this will put a smile onto Vanessa Vandenez's face, who, by the way, folks, is responsible for setting that interview up, and without her, it doesn't happen. So my gratitude to her. I don't say it enough here on the program. This email comes to us from Ken, and it says, thanks, Dan, for interviewing the Premier. Excellent interview, and many thanks to Vanessa for her hard work and effort in coordinating the interview. Much appreciated. Cheers and many thanks. That comes to us from Ken. Rob writes, the Premier, in response to the question as to why Nova Scotia has fewer statutory holidays than any other province, he said he wasn't considering it, and then referenced our low rate of productivity. He's implying that low productivity is caused by workers not working hard enough, when I'm sure he knows it's a measure of our lack of leveraging things like technology to increase efficiency. This is a dishonest take in an effort to dodge a fair question, and that comes to us from Rob. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the telephone line if you want to get on and share your thoughts. And it is an open hour, folks, so we don't have to it doesn't have to center upon the responses from the Premier. If you want to bring something else to the table, this is an opportunity to do that as well. Let's go to the phone lines, and we say hello again to Keith. Keith, how are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Your thoughts on the Premier?
I should say this afternoon.
I guess it is, right? It is afternoon.
Okay. Well, I had a two-part question, and the first part was why here in Nova Scotia we're paying the second highest rent in Canada. I wasn't really quite sure on his answer. So do you know what the answer to that would be? Why we're paying this all this rent here? We only have 1 million people here in the province. So, yeah, that was kind of my question. I'm not quite sure if he answered that clearly.
I won't put words into the Premier's mouth, but he did sort of refer to the market itself and the rent cap creating unintended consequences. But I don't know. I'm not going to answer for him.
Okay. Can I ask you about another subject?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, it's not really relevant right at this point with e-scooters because of the snow. But when the season starts again, has City Council ever looked into who is responsible for insurance coverage in case of somebody getting struck by a scooter or running into a car or getting hit by a car? Is that something that would be the company that owns the e-scooters? Would they be responsible for coverage for that, or would the person have to take that out of their own pocket, or would the HRM, would they be able to look into that?
Well, Keith, I asked that question to our counselors on Monday on the hot seat, and they weren't entirely sure. Somebody sent me there's a waiver that you have to sign when you get onto the app for that thing, but it's not necessarily clear who is responsible for that. But with waivers, you sign away responsibility, right? That's kind of why they're there.
Okay, well, that's my question. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate it, sir. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Email from Len, who was upset that we didn't get to his call, and I don't think you're alone, Len. I think that many people that tried to get in were unsuccessful. I have to tell you, the lines were busy, and they are busy when we have the Premier on here. And I did apologize, and I will apologize again if I didn't get to anybody who was on hold for a while. I did my best to try and go in order, but that's the way that the ball bounces sometimes with these things. And again, my apologies to those of you who didn't get a chance to ask the Premier a question. He did indicate on the way out the door that he's willing to do this again, so we will work to have the Premier join us here on the show on a semi-regular basis so that we can get you in front of him and ask him a question. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Lots of emails that came in, as I mentioned, as a result of our conversation. This one comes to us from Tom in Dartmouth, and it reads, I believe the Premier is in favor of population growth. If that is indeed the case, did he not see what happened when the federal Liberal government strongly encouraged population growth? We, and he says Nova Scotia, simply don't have the infrastructure for another spike in growth. That comes to us from Tom. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Again, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. My computer's locking up. So what I'm going to do is take a break, and we'll come back to your calls. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is the Open Hour. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. Telephone lines are wide open, folks. If you want to get in and join the program, 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Your opportunity to talk about whatever it is on your mind, maybe something you heard from the Premier today, or maybe something else. We had a pretty vigorous conversation yesterday on the gun buyback program and HRP's involvement with it. We asked the Premier for clarification off the top of the hour, and he did clarify his position on it. He says that Nova Scotia is not going to be involved in the gun buyback program. He called it a failed program, and he said it was good intentioned, but isn't working properly, and no provincial money will be going to a police service specifically earmarked for the gun buyback program. So the Premier doesn't have control over a police force, which I think we can see that makes sense, right? But he does control the purse strings. So no provincial money will be coming to HRP for their inclusion into the gun buyback program, I guess is the way that he described it. That was the clarification point that a number of you had asked me to get out there today, and we did that. And I'm interested in your thoughts on it moving forward. Also, outside of the Premier's talk today, did you read some of the ongoing debates around City Council and this 10.9% increase in taxes? Yesterday, they were having a discussion surrounding parking, folks. And a number of votes were held on parking here in HRM. And some of these matters have been referred to a later stage of the budgeting process where the yay or nays happen. But at this point, if council has its way, we're going to see, I think it was a 25% increase in parking fees. For those of you that park on the street at the meter, you'll see an increase in that. And HRM Council also passing almost unanimously the ability to start now charging for parking on Saturdays on the streets of downtown Halifax. I can imagine the Downtown Improvement Associations, the Spring Garden Improvement or Business Association, the Downtown Halifax Business Association, the Downtown Dartmouth Business Association, likely not happy to hear this. The mayor, in the story that I read earlier today, said that it was his hope that they were going to be able to figure out a way that you can get the first hour 3 to, encourage what they call churn, which is people turning over spots. So you go park for free for an hour, and then you leave before you have to pay the fee. And they also had a debate yesterday on including Sundays into the paid parking regime. That was defeated at council. So at this point, council's looking at increasing parking rates by up to 25%, and a increase of days that they're going to charge for parking, on-street parking we're talking here, and include Saturdays. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We knew that there was going to be some tough decisions that were made with regards to the budget. We know that there was going to be some tough decisions made that were going to impact some of the services that we've become accustomed to here in HRM. We've talked about outside-the-box thinking with regards to some of the services and fees that we pay here in HRM, and it looks like this is the start of it. Is it a smart idea to hike parking rates and to start charging now for parking on the streets in Halifax, in HRM, on Saturdays? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. That is the number if you want to join the conversation. And the lines are wide open, folks. If you have a question or a comment that you want to bring up, here's a great opportunity to do that as well. A rather shocking story has surfaced, and this one comes to us from the police today, and it goes back to some of the questions and concerns that several have raised about the hockey culture in Nova Scotia and in Canada and around the world. This one comes to us from Colchester County. 3 youth have been arrested as part of a sexual assault investigation related to hazing incidents involving a hockey team in the Truro area. Back on January 30th, the youth reported being assaulted during a private team gathering in October of 2025. The RCMP Community Action Team immediately began to investigate, which included statements from multiple witnesses. Investigators gathered information indicating offenses had occurred at other locations and that these incidents involved other victims and witnesses. On February the 3rd, the 3 youth were arrested without incident. 1 youth now facing charges of sexual assault with a weapon, sexual assault, and assault with a weapon. 2nd youth facing a charge of sexual assault with a weapon, sexual assault, and assault with choking. 3rd youth facing a single charge of sexual assault with a weapon. Investigators say they do believe there may be other victims who have yet to come forward, including some who may reside outside of Colchester County. I understand team unity. I understand team bonding. I understand team building. But hazing incidents like this go way too far. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Albert.
Yeah, just follow up on some of my questions to the Premier.
Sure.
I know it's a pretty limited format. You just got time to ask one question. He gives an answer. But yeah, my main concerns I'd like to address was this government has just too narrow a focus. It's all based on all these policies are based on the prospect of increasing our population quickly by 1 million people. And for me, this is going to benefit only a small elite group of developers and industry execs. And I don't like the intrusion of the province onto the municipal affairs. The city came up with a pretty good environmental program with their 30-meter water setbacks, provisions of wildlife corridors, and the requirement for ground floor commercial space to create, diverse residential communities. And the Premier wants to reduce all of these, and I can't see how that is even an advantage to the developers that he's representing. I mean, 10 feet of waterfront space isn't going to make that much of an increase in development potential. But it has a tremendous effect on the environment and the quality of life of the neighborhoods. As far as my second concern is his rural policies, he's continuing increasing glyphosate spraying. A lot of provinces have banned it outright. But this is an environmental hazard. It creates a greater forest fire potential, and it just disrupts the natural balance of our forests. The second thing of his rural policy is the province, believe it or not, they're going to discontinue maintenance of our dike land. Our history goes way back to the Acadians and how fondly we regard their efforts to start agriculture in the province, and then they established the first dike lands.
Are you talking about the Dykelands in up in Amherst, up that way?
Well, it'll be all through our alluvial areas, Annapolis Valley and along the Minas Basin. This is the richest farmland we have, and the province is going to discontinue maintaining that. So, yeah, I just wanted to raise these concerns to the public, and I realize there's not room to answer every single question on a limited format. And it's a reduction of environmental protection. And I don't think environmental protections are that much of an impediment to resource development. It just means we develop our resources in a way that's beneficial, that has long-lasting benefits to our economy and our ecology. So that's my concerns. And I don't like the way this government is going at all. It's so heavy-handed, especially his approach to our urban affairs. He's reduced increasing density in our city and allowing the total demolition of our most historic neighborhoods. And you can see it happening in Halifax now. You just drive down there any given day and you see another block being demolished in the most attractive part of the city. Now, other cities, they value their historic neighborhoods. And this is very important to Halifax, being the oldest English city. Tourism is our second largest industry. And we have room for high-rise development at many other places in the city rather than in our historic South End. So, yeah, I don't like the way this province is going at all. Too much intrusion into municipal affairs, all based on rapid growth and developed profits. It's not in the best interest of the people at all.
Thanks,
so
Albert.
I'll leave you with that. Thank you. Yeah,
Appreciate it. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. My response to that is with regards to tourism and old buildings, I get it and I understand it, but I've also understand that I don't think a block of buildings at the end of Spring Garden Road is a major tourism draw. I don't think that people check that on their list to go and see some old houses on Spring Garden Road. That's just my opinion. I understand the concern about destroying our history and destroying some of the historical houses here. I do understand that, but I think there needs to be a balance. I think we have to preserve our history, but we also have to make places for people to live. And I know the argument is that some of those old houses would have had several apartments in them, and we're not going to have a significant amount of net gain. And I do understand that, and we know that those old houses are cheaper rents than the new construction. I understand all of that, but there has to be a balance, because if we don't develop, right, we stagnate. And growth is happening. You don't have to look very far to see that. And the Premier does have a plan to double the population, right? So the argument I hear on the program a lot is that we can't have migration to the province, immigration or cross provincial migration to the province, because we don't have the infrastructure to support it. So it's a chicken or the egg thing, right? And the converse to that is that if we encourage development outside of the downtown core, then we contribute to congestion. So there has to be a way to balance it all, right? We're back after the news. All right, welcome back. Open Hour continues right up until the top of the hour. If you have something you want to bring to the conversation, lots of lines open, folks. 902-405-6000 or 1-877-801-8255. Let's go back to the phones, and we welcome Frankie to the show. Frankie, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. What's on your mind?
Parking.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
It's like everybody wants to go to bed and go, I don't want to talk about that.
Right.
All right. Right. Okay, so parking. All right, here's my 2 cents worth.
Sure.
I'm in the Dartmouth area, so I see a lot of weekend problems where a lot of people will jam up these spots, especially when there's a special event or a game on or whatever else. So all of a sudden, Dartmouth becomes a parking zone. And especially down in the King's Wharf area, you see all these cars jamming up and they park in the middle. There's no parking you have to pay for.
Right.
And so people will sometimes take advantage of that, and they'll usually catch the ferry to go over to Halifax. So the thing is, people are living literally 1, 2, 3 paychecks from being out of their home. So I wouldn't increase parking. What I would, the fee for it, I would say, listen, why don't we just start charging for weekends? And if you do that, that'll supplement a lot of that, and I think that will help, especially out the congestion in the area, and people won't be taking advantage of these spots in front of homes and in condominium areas. When they're building all these buildings now that you see are 10, 15, 20 stories high, is there any reason why they can't put up a 20, 30-story parkade where people can pay for parking?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that parkades, people hate them, but I don't know if that's if there's a law against it or not, how high they can be.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was just my 2 cents worth.
Appreciate it, Frankie.
Okay, see ya.
Have a good one. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. I know when parking structures are built, there tends to be significant pushback against them, right? But we know we have a parking issue. I would like to hear from somebody in the business community, particularly if you have a business down in Dartmouth downtown or Halifax downtown or one of our downtown cores that people park on the street to facilitate coming into your business. What you think of increasing parking fees, A, and B, charging for parking on Saturdays this time around. Sundays have been exempt. That was a no-go with council, but council is certainly considering charging for parking on Saturdays. Business owners, your thoughts on that. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Barry.
Hi, Dan. How you doing?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
I called yesterday about working from home to try to relieve some of the parking and traffic problems. And I think maybe I was misunderstood when I mentioned that the possibility of the HRM contributing an incentive to the employers. I didn't mean for the amounts being the salary of the person. I was just talking, maybe $20 a day or whatever, as an incentive. So I just wanted to clear that point up.
Okay, appreciate it, Barry.
Thank you.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. In case you're curious as to what Barry was talking about, he called yesterday with an idea to try and ease some of the congestion on HRM streets by making or offering an incentive to employers, particularly here on the peninsula, to have their employees work from home. And clarifying today, saying it doesn't have to be a lot, but an incentive to try and convince the employers that have workers that are able to get them to work from home. And I think I said yesterday after Barry's call that there's a number of agencies, governments, and big businesses that are spending a lot of money right now trying to get people back into the office. So I would be very, very surprised if HRM would be responsive to doing that. But as I said to Barry yesterday, and I'll say it again, we all need to put our thinking caps on when it comes to solving some of these problems, because when it comes to traffic, when it comes to congestion, when it comes to the impending municipal budget, when it comes to the issues that are perennial issues for us, things that we've been discussing for several years now, conventional thinking just doesn't appear to be, or at least conventional politicking doesn't appear to be working, because we continue to have these problems. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, Jim.
How you doing, Dan?
I'm well, Mr. Hoskins. What's going on?
Well, good. I caught your show with Premier Houston, and of course you had a lot of callers, so I tried to get on, but that's understandable.
Yep.
I just want to make a statement, if I can, in regards to what he said. In regards to the buyback program, the gun buyback program. He gave his spill on it. He did say that he doesn't support it, and that means his government as well, of course.
Yep.
He mentioned Cape Breton of $150,000. Correct me if I'm wrong now. $150,000, and only 26 firearms were turned over. I want to clarify something, if I can, very quickly.
Yep.
The buyback program, I have some issues with it, but I don't completely dismiss it, because it is an effort among many components to fight domestic abuse in particular, with homicides and domestics by way of firearm, not a knife or a kitchen. Most of those domestic, if not all homicides in a domestic situation, are the result of a firearm being used. That's a known fact, and there's plenty of stats to back it up if I had to. The other thing is he made the comment that, the criminals aren't going to walk up and turn a gun over to the police. Well, of course not. And they know that. The police know that. The government knows that. It's only one component to get as many firearms that are maybe on a certain list that shouldn't be they think shouldn't be available to the public. The other thing is this is a public safety issue. And when you have those issues, it's only proper that the government and the local police chiefs or whoever collaborate together. They sit down and they discuss. So when the chief says he supports this or the government says they don't, I would assume, and I was going to ask him this, did you ever have any conversations with the chief or his staff to discuss the components of this particular program and why you're in favor and not in favor and vice versa? You collaborate for public safety. When he used the word ridiculous, he got a bit of my ire. For a premier of the province to talk about public safety and dismiss the program and maybe indirectly the chief of police position as being ridiculous, I felt was inappropriate and disingenuous.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay.
902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. The Premier also said in that answer to that question that the program was well-intentioned, but is not accomplishing the goals of the intention. And that's kind of where I land on it. I think that the government of the day maybe too quickly was trying to come up with something in the after or the wake of Portapique. Reading through the list of firearms that are currently on the list, it feels kind of like the dartboard approach to me. That we pick stuff. And for no rhyme or reason, but I think I agree with the Premier that it was well intentioned, and I think that it's going to give the opportunity. It's going to have unintended consequences. I think for those of the callers yesterday that called me up that are actively using weapons that are on that list for target shooting. I didn't realize that there was such a large target shooting community in Nova Scotia, but apparently there is. I think that it's going to give the opportunity for people that want to get rid of those firearms and dispose of them to do so, which could, and I'm not saying will, but could end up in nefarious hands if there's not a proper way to dispose of them. I know there's always been a program to do that. You can always just bring your firearm down to the police department, but I think it's going to get a mechanism for people that want to get rid of their firearms to do so. I know you're going to disagree with me on that, but that's where I stand on it. Now to 405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Let us go to, where are we here? Eric, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, Dan. How are you doing? First of all, Patriots or Seattle? Get that out of the way.
I said
first.
Patriots long ago, and there's an avid Seahawk fan that emails me all the time that thinks I'm completely lost my mind, saying that I think that the Patriots defense is gonna hold today. But that's what I think.
That's two of us. I agree with you.
Cool.
Anyways, I was listening to the Premier there, and I have a hard time with this guy sometimes. I have to admit it. I'm a bit biased. He doesn't come across to me very humbly. Now, let's look at when he said there was a young guy that called up and asked about rent control.
Yep.
And then he asked if the rent control come off, would the government help people? Houston's reply was, well, if the people move out, the rent's going to go up. I can guarantee you something. In this environment, if somebody's got a rent that they can afford with a $30,000 a year income, they're not going to move. They're going to stay. And that was kind of callous as far as I'm concerned. The other thing, I don't know, Dan, I wasn't able to catch the whole program, but did he mention anything about nuclear power?
Nope.
You know what? If you take a look at Europe, you look at Germany was nuclear, and then they went back to, we'll say, the more conventional types of heat. And the way the energy prices soared was astronomical. You can check that for yourself. That was a number of years ago. And I think France had a good nuclear program, and their rate of pay for their bills, utility bills, was way lower than Germany. But I don't know. I think France might have discontinued as well, but I'm not sure about that. And I really don't see what the problem is with nuclear power. I think I mentioned this to you one time in a previous call. There's a guy by the name of Michael Schellenberger. He's a very good investigative journalist, and he makes a pretty good case for nuclear power. And I think that book was written in the mid-'90s or early 2000s. If I was in the position of Premier, I would really look at that. Because nuclear power has one of the best safety records there is, according to this gentleman. I don't see why we're not doing that. You know what I mean?
Everything has
don't get it.
There's a pro and con to everything, though, right, Eric? I mean, we get the environmental impact that coal has, but nuclear power, it may have a great safety record, but we also have some stuff that we have to dispose of, and where do we put that? How do we transport that? There are always questions with these things.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I just look at it as a good, and as you said before, there's no such thing as clean energy, and I totally agree with that.
Absolutely, there's
not.
none.
Compared to the last thing I'll say, thank you for your time. The last thing I'll say is that windmills, who produces them? China. Do they use them?
Oh,
no.
I don't know if that's entirely true, Eric, because I know a lot of the windmills that I've seen come through here come from Denmark.
Oh, I was talking about China. Yeah, that could be. They could be.
All right, man.
I just found that comment interesting. Thank you very much.
Cheers. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. We're back after the break. Welcome back. Cruise into the top of the hour here on the Friday Eve edition of the Todd Veinotte Show with the open hour. Email from Ken that reads, my counter to Mr. Hodgkins, who says taking certain weapons isn't going to solve domestic assaults with weapons. Every weapon, rifle, is deadly. I agree. I may have to turn in my AR style firearm, but my other one has the same actions, same 5.56 caliber, and I don't have to. Either take them all or why bother? He said, look at Australian and Bondi Beach. Horrific damage there. That was with shotguns. And they have some of the most struck weapons, most tough weapons laws in the world, and that joins us from Ken. So certainly we'll agree with some of that, Ken. That every rifle, every weapon, every handgun, every shotgun, every crossbow, every bow, every what other firearms? You can go down the list. All of them are deadly. That's their only intention, is to be deadly. And you raise some interesting points. If we're not going to do them all, then why bother? 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Hello, David.
Hello, how are you?
I'm well. What's on your mind?
Just listen to the show and about turning the bus lanes into carpools.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I said this before, and I don't know if council realized it, previous council realized it, but Dan, we were going to come to a point where we're overpopulated, where we have too much population on the peninsula, where it's too small of an area, and we're going to get in big time trouble, and it's starting. And I said this with, years ago on the show, and just look out your window and look at the buildings. Every one of those buildings, and I said it before, has half a population of cars in it. Do you think people are going to buy a condo and take a bus? They want their car. You said it yourself. You just come into work, you see one person in the car.
Well, no, over 90% of the vehicles I saw today. And granted, I was driving, so I wasn't paying total attention. But well over 90% were single occupant.
Because people aren't going to give up their car.
No.
People aren't going to give up what they have. If I'm paying for $260,000 condo, which is half of what they probably really are in Halifax.
Yeah, right.
Do you think for a minute I'm going to leave my car in a down underground parking and take a bus or walk? No, I want that, because that's what we're coming to. And the buildings they're building in Halifax, and even in the outskirts, look at Kearney Lake Road all the way to Hammonds Plains Road now.
Yep.
It's crazy. Like 2 roundabouts in there to slow traffic down, to get the people around. Like we're coming to a point And then if you can look down the road next 3 or 4 years, where we're going to be at? What kind of congestion are we going to have? We're already, third worst in the country for traffic?
Yes, sir.
So what are we going to take the number one spot? And no one is looking at it. Nobody is really sitting at the desk and saying, okay, how can we slow this down? What can we do here to stop this? And they just keep on building. They keep on digging. They can't go out, Dan, so they go up. So now they're going up 20, 30 stories. And they got parkades full of cars right downtown Halifax. And so now you got the provincial government looking at the municipal government and saying, how can we work together to fix this? Because now we're in a crunch.
Yeah.
Why let it get to this point? Why did they let it get this far? Was there nobody with any brains at a desk in City Hall that could see this was going to happen? Like we should have had a ferry, Dan, a long time ago to go from Bedford.
Oh, my goodness. They've been talking about that before I moved to Nova Scotia. That was well over 15 years ago.
And that's all they do is talk. And then, like you said, and then, you know what? Let's take it to staff and get another report. What is that costing us? It's like, let's look at it. Let's get someone else to look at it. Let's think about it. No, that's not good. Let's see what else we can do. So I guess my point is I'm frustrated because when I have to go to Halifax, which I really don't want to, but when I do, why does it take me a half an hour to go from the south end to the old bridge, to get across the old bridge, to get home here in Dartmouth? Why is that happening? Is because the infrastructure is too small. There's too many people. It's not built for all these people. You keep putting buildings in there, and you have no answer how to correct it. You can honestly say, Dan, look down into the future and say, how's this going to get better? It's not, because the roads can't get any wider. Oh, let's buy houses and tear down trees. Like they're just throwing darts out there trying to put a Band-Aid on a sore.
Thanks, David.
It's going to get to a... All right, have a good day.
Thank you, sir. 902-405-6000, 1-877-801-8255. Here's how we're going to David's point, here's how we're going to fix that, right? We need to create a mass transit system that is efficient, that is on time, and that is convenient. Because to what David said, why would you take transit now? Right? Why would you give up your car or leave your car in the parking garage and take a bus that's going to take you sometimes twice, if not longer, the amount of time to get there? In order to get people to use mass transit, and is it buses? Maybe. Is it light rail? Maybe. Is it something else? Yes. But to get people to use it, it has to be cheaper than driving their cars. It has to be faster than taking their cars. And it has to be safer than taking their cars. And until we get those three pillars done, people aren't getting out of their cars. I'm looking out at Roby right now. It's a continual line of traffic. And that's with bus lanes here. I think our city fathers need to answer those three questions. It has to be cheaper. It has to be faster. And it has to be safer. And then, and only then, I think, will people get out of their cars. My thanks again to Premier Tim Houston for taking time out of his schedule. He flew in from Boston last night and came directly here. So we are eternally grateful to him for joining us and sitting in this chair and answering the questions. And hopefully we can do that again soon. My gratitude to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for setting that up and all of the hard work that she does each and every day here on the program. To all our other guests, thank you for imparting your knowledge upon us. To all of you who dialed the numbers and joined the program, again, my apologies that we didn't get to you all during the premier segment. We're going to do the open hour again tomorrow to wrap up the week. It's time for the Friday Free-for-All. I hope that you can join us and discuss things then. Tomorrow is the Friday edition of the program. We, of course, will see Tim here, and he will be joining us to take a look at what's going on in Ottawa. Alistair will be in the studio to give us the latest on the weekend weather. It's not looking as snowy. That's a good thing anyway. And Clinton Wilkins will be joining us tomorrow to tee up the Mortgage 101 episode this month. And Cecil will be here on the eve of the Super Bowl. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Get out there and enjoy what we have here in Nova Scotia. We're lucky to live here. Be well, and remember, it's important. Be kind to one another.